Hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about stuff. This one might get a bit intense, so I do apologize in advance. There's a lot of numbers and a lot of figures to go over, so I'm going to try my best. We have, in the last 4 months, seen what I would call an egregious amount of, dare I say, price predictions for Bitcoin. As we get closer to the halving, and we now have the illustrious Bitcoin spot ETFs that the market had been waiting over a decade for, the constant discussion is, of course, going to be how high will prices go based off of all these factors. We've talked about accumulation on this channel 9 bajillion times. For those of you who've missed the last videos, the numbers that we've had before is that the companies just issuing the Bitcoin ETFs are holding over now 151,000 Bitcoin, and that's just over the course of a 3.5 week period or so. We know other companies are buying. We know other institutions are also in the market. We know that other countries are also buying up Bitcoin as well. In a simpler, much simpler format, not even really taking into account the entirety of that, what a lot of people do look at and has been the previous metrics from other bull runs, how long they've lasted, like the multiplier of how much Bitcoin has actually gone up from any given time. And that leads us to this discussion. One of the most common forms of a price prediction that we have received in the last 4 to 5 months as far as where prices are going to go this year. This is not including the crazy wild ride of always the year after the halving. The year after the halving is like the crazy bananas euphoric year, and we haven't even gotten to those numbers yet. We're focusing just on 2024. The normal number that we have constantly seen thrown out there for where people are expecting Bitcoin's price to be this year in 2024 is anywhere between, hear me out here, is anywhere between $90,000 to $150,000. I know it sounds a bit insane, but take into mind the supply crunch, the supply drop that we're seeing, the actual liquid Bitcoin. You've seen in other videos, if you've been watching on this channel, the illiquid supply of Bitcoin, the amount of Bitcoin that's stable. It's not moving. People have purchased it, put it into a ledger, put it onto a computer. It's not moving. These coins are just being accumulated and they're not being taken out. Has continued to rise. The amount of actual liquid Bitcoin that is available for 8 billion people to purchase continues to dwindle as well. And we can even see these numbers. This is how we know the 151,000 Bitcoin just purchased by these companies. This is a bit different in that this is a simple multiplier based on a number of factors. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of numbers, so we're going to have to go through all of them so that you actually see how this person got to this number. And the craziest part is that he gave a conservative number. He didn't even give what the actual numbers should be. He said something way, way lower. His name is Thomas Young. He's a managing partner at Rumjog Enterprises. And he looked at an analysis from Bank of America a number of years ago based on something called the 118 multiplier concept. And this, I'm sure also someone was like, Bank of America? Yeah. For those of you who missed it, all the American banks are into crypto. They may sit there and lie to you and tell you that they're not, but they're all into crypto. They all have analytics teams. And more than likely, regardless of them not having an ETF, they're all accumulating Bitcoin as well. So he used this 118 multiplier. It says a metric introduced by Bank of America in 2021. This multiplier shows that an investment influx of approximately, so these are the numbers. Bank of America said in 2021 that between 92 and 93 million dollars, like worth of dollars, was needed to move Bitcoin's price by 1%. This is something that almost no one talks about anymore. This was usually a really big topic in 2017, 18, and 19, is that you don't need $1 billion for Bitcoin's price to move. The actual amount of money needed to move a coin is actually far lower. This was also a topic of discussion that many people were having on Twitter the last couple of weeks about a number of altcoins and where the coins can go. The perception is that, well, if your market cap is 17 billion, you have $17 billion flowing through your coin, and that's not how it's calculated at all. It's actually something a lot simpler. And this is why we've seen before, if you've paid attention to a company announcing that they've purchased a large amount of Bitcoin, we can see on some days, even before the announcement, the price has popped up. And that was simply because they bought off the actual market, like from a cryptocurrency exchange or what have you. They said, I don't know if you can hear that movement. They said that between 92 to $93 million would move Bitcoin's price by 1%. They said at the time, Bitcoin's market cap was approximately $1.09 trillion, corresponding to a price of $58,000 per coin. So he said, I'm going to do it a little bit different. And he said the multiplier is a result of several interacting variables, including the volume, the velocity of capital inflow, the readily tradable supply of Bitcoin, and external factors affecting risk metrics in the broader market. Thus, the 118x multiplier is a suggested dynamic rather than a fixed indicator. Using this information, drawing on information that he found online, he saw that there was a constant growth in the amount of Bitcoin that the Bitcoin ETFs were accumulating each day. We've seen a flux anywhere between 4,000 or so to around 9,000 plus per day that these companies are actually accumulating. So he said on the average influx for him of new coins into these ETFs results in around 4,193 new coins per day being absorbed by these ETFs. He says this translates to approximately around, with that 4,000 coins, $176 million of new capital inflow every day into the ETFs. That's $176 million. Previously, before, the numbers that we got were $92 million to move Bitcoin by just 1%. This would state then $176 million worth of inflows would move Bitcoin's price by 1.5% daily. Everyone still with me? So to make things a little bit easier, instead of going by the $176 million per day, he lowered it and gave a more conservative figure and said, let's do based off of if they're only accumulating $150 million per day worth of Bitcoin over the course of a working trading calendar month. Instead of doing the 118 multiplier that we saw from Bank of America, he said, let's lower that as well, and let's give a nice round number of 50. So he didn't do 118, he didn't do 100. He said, let's do if there's just a 50x multiplier based off of the same exact numbers from Bank of America. He calculated an estimated monthly upward price. Here we go. He said if we gave a conservative number that is less than half of the 118x multiplier and even lowered the amount of Bitcoin that they would be accumulating per day, we would get, he says, upward price pressure of around $8,000 per month on Bitcoin, just based off of his lower metrics. So the numbers should actually be around $17,000, $18,000 worth of upward pressure. But I think a lot of people sometimes give far more conservative numbers. It's similar to Plan B. For those of you who've never seen one of Plan B's speeches when he's been on podcasts and stuff like that years ago, his chart usually always ends or no longer goes any further than the year 2032. And there was one guy who was asking him, why? Why don't you show any further? He said, because the numbers begin to look quite ridiculous. He said by 2032, his estimates are showing anywhere between a 10 to $100 million Bitcoin. And he says, when you say those numbers out loud, people kind of laugh at you. They look at you sideways and they go, you sound insane, as opposed to looking at the numbers and the metrics and seeing that this is probably where we are going. But it's very difficult to say out loud that Bitcoin would have a month-on-month increase of $18,000 per coin just from the buying pressure of the people who have the ETFs. Take everything else into account. If you have 9 companies who are accumulating, he's going based off of their numbers. Just sorry for screaming. Just the companies who are accumulating with an ETF, that would give us, at his conservative numbers, $8,000 per month. That's not the normal 118x multiplier. That's not the other companies who are also buying Bitcoin. These 9 companies aren't the only 9 companies who are allowed to buy Bitcoin. There are already spot Bitcoin ETFs in Canada, in New Zealand, in Australia, in Germany, across Europe. We've gone over these numbers before. You can see how much they have. These other companies are also holding and buying billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin as well. It's not just the US ETFs. And then you take into account that we know that Block, Jack Dorsey, Tether, Ripple, the Ethereum Foundation, all these other companies are also buying Bitcoin. And that's like, these are like, millions of dollars purchased over the course of a month. Take into account that you're also buying, your friends are also buying, and the new people who are getting into the market all the time. The number should be $16,000, $17,000, $18,000 worth of upward price pressure just based off of the ETF holders. He went conservative and said 8,000 just based off of them. The number that he gave, he said conservatively, this calculation leads us to an end of the year price per Bitcoin. I'm not sure if you can hear the dog barking outside. A year-end price target of at least $131,000 per Bitcoin. This is roughly around. So the weirdest part for me is that over the course of the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months, between this channel and the other channel, the price predictions that we're getting for Bitcoin by the end of the year are all roughly floating around the exact same number. The weirder parts, and I don't want to call them industry insiders, that sounds a little bit too fancy and glitzy. A lot of the people in the cryptocurrency space who hang out with the other market makers, they've told us that they think the amount of Bitcoin that's being accumulated is going largely unnoticed by the rest of the market. It's being accumulated over the counter, OTC, and therefore we're not seeing these volumes on crypto exchanges, because if we could, we'd be over a $60,000, $70,000 Bitcoin. What this does lead to is that as we move closer to the halving, people are going to start buying more and more Bitcoin in anticipation of the actual halving. But the problem is that a huge portion of that Bitcoin will already be gone. It'll already be given to the ETF holders and all these other things. So any purchase in an illiquid market where there's not a lot of Bitcoin left is going to have an upward effect on the price. And this is why we've heard from a number of people. They were like, they're expecting that by the time we're at the halving, we will be at or very close to a $100,000 Bitcoin. There's a lot going on. I told you it was going to be a bit of an intense video, and I think I did well. I think I did pretty well as far as like not completely going insane and like screaming into the microphone like I maybe did once or twice, but there's so much happening in this market. And a lot of times when people don't see immediate price movements, even when we hear that these companies have bought 151,000 Bitcoin and the price doesn't move, a lot of people get deterred and they go, well, are they actually buying? What's happening with the price? They're making sure to buy in such a way that it doesn't and won't go on your radar, so that when the prices do pop, when things do skyrocket up, you have no idea what happened. Anyway, it's a very long topic, trying not to get off course, but I think this is going to be a very, very crazy year. Like a really, like, I mean, like an actually like completely insane. Like I think like by the end of the year, we're going to be like, what the fudge happened to everything that's been going on? That's his conservative numbers just from the ETF purchases. Nothing else. I think the craziest one that we saw was around, I think 170 to 200,000 per Bitcoin by the end of this year. And I hold back having hope for those numbers because that would mean that the altcoin market has completely, of course, lost its mind. Like we'd see brand new all-time highs of altcoins by the end of this year. And we still haven't even gotten to 2025. For those of you who don't know, and I'll put it to you this way. In 2016, I think Bitcoin's price was, what was it, 200? Somewhere around there. By the beginning of 2017, Bitcoin's price was just at 1,000. By the end of 2017, it was 20,000. Prices always pump quite high during the year of the halving. The year after the halving is where things go bananas and like really, really insane. And there's a lot of price predictions for next year. And if we hit 120, 130, 160, 170, $180,000 Bitcoin this year, I literally shudder to think exactly how high Bitcoin's going to be in 2025. I think it might cause a bit of a frenzy unlike anything that we're, because also keeping in mind, if those accumulations are happening and these people already have 151,000 Bitcoin's already illiquid. There's not a lot of it really moving around. That's why they're buying over the counter to not hit the trading exchange numbers. And then everyone else starts buying like they always do. After the halving, you'll see. If this is your first cycle, get ready. Because everyone begins to buy in mass, knowing that there's literally half of what there was before. But then this also leads us to a situation where when we hit these new highs, when we pass by 70,000, it's going to hit the news. It'll hit Fox News, it'll hit CNBC, it'll hit all the other channels. And then normal people who aren't in the market will begin to buy as well in anticipation of prices moving. And they're buying into an already illiquid market where the ETF holders are still going to be buying. The CEOs of these companies are also buying. It's part of the common misconception when we hear in the news that accumulation is happening, people think that it's just that one entity and no one else. Like imagine 500 workers and they're all like, okay, we'll just put it into this fund and none of us will be buying, not the CEO, not the CFO, no one else is buying. No, it's nonsense. Of course, they're also buying as well. You think Larry Fink is just being like, okay, let's just accumulate Bitcoin for our shareholders. No one else can buy. Of course, he's also buying as well. The same exact way that we've heard the other millionaires and billionaires who are also buying. Remember the other billionaires, the guy in Mexico who told us that he was already a billionaire, but he's buying more and more allocations of Bitcoin all the time. We know that other countries are also buying. Anyway, yeah. He says 131,000 with conservative numbers. Just from the ETF holders. I think it's going to be a wild and wacky year. And at this point, okay. Yes, right. Okay. I do hope that you've all enjoyed. For those of you who want to read it, the article will be in the description below. I sincerely hope that you've all enjoyed. I do hope you all are having a great day. Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and or supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.